just wanted to make a short video about the upcoming solar eclipse that's happening. It's a big one, so I wanted to give some information about what's generally recommended in Vedic astrology to do during eclipses, as well as run through each of the rising signs and give you maybe a little bit more specific insight into how the eclipse might affect you. So it's a big one in that it's happening on December 14th of this year, so in just about a week or so. And it also, if you're in the US, falls on the same day that the Electoral College is putting its vote together. So it's going to be a really interesting time and a really interesting experience. I'm in a strange way looking forward to it, but I want to see what happens. So, but anyway, anytime eclipses happen, it has an effect on the society at whole as well as us individually. And a lot of these changes come in the form of political changes. It can be upheavals, it can be a little bit chaotic, it can be unknown, it can be a little bit crazy. And it also can happen on an environmental level. So sometimes we'll see maybe some more natural disasters, storms, volcanoes, things like that. So it's something to be mindful of in the larger sphere, and as well as our inner selves as well. So anytime an eclipse happens, we view this as a time that you want to go much more internal than you would at other times. So it's not really recommended to start big projects or go out and complete things. Really what you want to do is stay home, be as internalized as possible. It's a great time to increase your meditation practice if you do that. Prayer, contemplation, anything that brings you more into your inner self rather than the expansive outer self. So since the eclipse, what it's doing is it tends to shadow the sun. The sun would represent like our sense of self or a sense of authority in the world and that type of thing. So this gets shadowed. It leaves us feeling a little bit unstable, a little bit less calm, and sometimes unable to make clear decisions. So it's a great time to concentrate more on the internal work that we can do. And this particular eclipse is happening in Scorpio, which shows an even bigger connection to that sense of our deeper psychological selves and things like that. It's also in the moon sign of Jeshta, which is known as the mystic. It's a beautiful sign in a lot of ways. It again points a lot towards creating boundaries of self-protection over ourselves, as well as concentrating more on our inner work as opposed to our place in the outer world. And I'll just say too, with the south node, which is where this eclipse is affecting, it's a lot about, it's the graha or planet of liberation, or moksha is what they call it. So in a lot of ways, whenever this eclipse shows up in this part of our chart in this way, it's going to show us areas that we need to let go of. Sometimes we can, if we do that by choice, it can be nice and easy and no big deal and lead us to a greater sense of liberation. If we fight and we struggle, we might find it to be a very difficult and painful, challenging thing too. So again, receptivity is probably the biggest recommendation I'd make about dealing with this eclipse. Main thing I'd say with eclipses is try not to exert your will on things, and try to be more receptive and accepting of things and looking for the messages that are going to come to you at this time. Most of the effects of the eclipse will be felt right on the 14th, but even a couple days before and a couple days after, there's still a little bit of effect of it. So traditionally they would say you really shouldn't leave the house, you know, and we have lives to live, so we can't necessarily do that. But particularly right during the eclipse itself, if you're able to stay indoors, that's always recommended. It's good to make fresh food. Generally, you don't want to have leftover foods and things like that from that you made before the eclipse. So make your fresh food afterwards. It's always recommended to take a bath or a shower, clean yourself, clean your laundry, that type of thing. So it's a period of renewal, and there's the rebirth that comes after that. So each of the signs or each of our charts will be influenced in a slightly different way depending on where the eclipse is happening in your chart. So this is where getting a consultation and having your chart looked at can give you some even more direct insight into how this eclipse might affect you. If you'd like to do a reading and have your chart analyzed a little bit more specifically, I'm available. I'm running a special this month. You can check it out on my website, but I'll run through some of the signs real quick. For those of you who don't know, this is sidereal-based astrology, Vedic astrology is. So your rising sign might be slightly different, and probably is, than your Western rising sign. So you can either use your rising sign in this case or your moon sign. But for Aries people, this is going to fall in your 8th house. And this is a pretty intense house to have your eclipse happening in. So this is ruled by Scorpio as well. So it shows that there's a lot of internalized deep work to do on that deeper spiritual level. I recommend being careful of scandals, getting caught up in schemes, things like that. There's a little bit more proneness or susceptibility to that type of thing, so just be mindful of that. For Taurus rising people or Taurus moon, this is going to fall in your 7th house, which rules relationships and the outer world. And so this is a good place to be receptive to how relationships that you're in are going to affect you. If you're approaching a new relationship, something like that, it's something to be a little bit more pull back from just a bit, just to get a sense of how this is going to affect you and if this is really a good thing. If you're in a relationship also, it's a good time to look and see what subtle messages you're receiving from your partnerships or your friendships, and be more mindful of that. For Gemini ascendant people, this falls in your 6th house, which rules your health. It also rules conflict, hard work, some of the drudgeries of life and things like that. So you may find some more insights into these parts of your life. It's a good time maybe not to go to court or get into any kind of arguments or things like that. There's going to be just a little bit of rise of this type of energy in your chart and in your life, so it's something to maybe pull back a little bit from. Cancer ascendant people, this is going to fall into your 5th house, which rules children, luck, gambling, and relationship as well. So what you want to be mindful of this case, if you do have children, be a little bit more receptive to what they need, what they're saying. Don't get too worried if there's a little bit of conflict arises. That's a very normal thing for this type of period. Don't let it escalate. Don't get too involved. Just kind of let it pass and maybe kind of reflect on what the larger messages that might be for you. Leo ascendant people, this is going to fall into your 4th house, which rules homes, vehicles, your deeper sense of happiness. This might be a time you find you're wanting to move houses, or that you know, the opportunity to change in some major way in your house is going to come up. It's probably not the best time to do that. This is really a time just to kind of lay low, but allow that information to come in. Use your discrimination. There's subtle messages there for you too. Virgo people, this is going to fall into your 3rd house. This rules your siblings, neighbors, social media, events, games, things like that. So this might be an area that you find yourself a little bit more detached from. Same thing with the children. If you're having some conflicts, if you do have siblings, things like that, this may spark a little bit of that. It may cause a little bit of separation or divide between your siblings. It's also a good time to maybe back away from social media a little bit, as we know this can also cause a lot of conflicts. So it's a time to sort of pull back, self-reflect on these areas of your life. Libra people, this falls into your 2nd house, which rules your values, how you make your money, family, the words you speak. This is a great time to maybe go a little more internal with your words and not maybe speak so much. Practice maybe even a day of silence, or just being mindful of the words that you're using. Same thing with your family. It's a good time to look at the connections you have and maybe not contribute to whatever family dynamic discord there may and often already is. For Scorpio folks, this is going to fall into your 1st house, and this will probably be one of the more intense people who are going to be affected by this eclipse. So if you are a Scorpio ascendant, this is going to be a lot about self-transformation. It's going to be a lot about cutting cords, letting go of things that are no longer serving you, letting go of potentially people, places, or habits that you do. I would encourage that very, very much, and it's another thing pointing that just going internal during this period would be the best time to get through. For Sagittarius people, this is going to fall into your 12th house, which is a house of loss. It's also a house of moksha and liberation as well. So double time. You may find yourself feeling isolated, alone. Use this gift in a way that doesn't contribute to furthering a spiral into depression, anxiety. You may find yourself confronted with external enemies. Know that this time will pass. That'll be okay. Don't get too involved in new projects. Don't start any long-term travel plans, anything like that. This is very, very much a time just to allow that singular space for yourself. And Capricorn people, this will fall into your 11th house, which rules larger societies. It rules your bank account. The big thing I would say with this is watch your expenses. It may be a time of loss, much like people with their eclipse happening in the 12th house. This may be a time you have to spend a little bit more money. Be mindful of where money might be slipping out, that type of thing. So it's a good time maybe to check your bank account, make sure everything is in order, make sure bills are paid on time, there's no late fees or overdraft charges, and it's just a time that you may experience a little bit of loss. So again, this time will pass, but just be mindful around your finances. Aquarius people, this will fall into your 10th house of career. This is a time you may find yourself either pushed into a job change or a desire for a job change. You might find yourself a little bit detached from your job at large. Not necessarily a good time to make these changes, but if it is a situation where it's being kind of forced on you, accept that change and just know that this is part of a growth spurt for you, and that it will lead to better things. So a lot of folks are dealing with rough job situations right now, so particularly if this is where the eclipse is happening in your chart, you may have this experience as well. Pisces people, Pisces ascendants or Pisces moon, you're going to have your eclipse happening in your 9th house, which rules greater wisdom, teachers, gurus. It also rules the father. It's a good time to pay respect to your ancestors, pay respect to your gurus and teachers. Don't recommend so much as a time to take a lot of advice from people unless they're maybe your direct teacher who you trust very much. It's a time where you may be faced with some maybe not so clear advice and that kind of thing. So it's a good time to maybe, again, as for most of the signs, just go internal, bide your time, continue your practices that you do on your own, and wait till the eclipse is over. Thanks so much. Take care.